Tonight, my mood as a Ghanaian is that of anger. And you ought to feel same. This anger is over the same script I have to read year after year as an assistant editor in the Joy Newsroom. I can pick a 10-year script on Accra Floods and probably do not have to change anything, including the eyewitnesses, probably just the victims and maybe casualties. And yes, the date will also change. Why are you not angry about the situation? Why are you not angry that institutions mandated to ensure we do not build in waterways are not doing so? Why are we not angry that the so-called rich and powerful in society can just build anyhow? Why are you not angry that the road projects can be stalled by contractors even though they are aware the delay can cost people's lives? Is it because your rugged four-wheelers can cruise through the flood waters? Well, the day cometh, Mr. Big Man or big woman, when it will be your wife, sister, mother, son or daughter that will be caught up near the Odo or Kaneshi market when it stands to rain. I leave the rest to your own imagination and your conscience. We are tired of seeing sector ministers from the various governments touring the capital, sometimes in helicopters, to ascertain the extent of damage after the flooding. What sort of people are we that forget so easily, so much so that the politician takes us for granted? Accra flooding has claimed one too many lives. Accra flooding has claimed millions of cedis through damage to properties. What will it take for something significant to happen? Was June 3 not enough? Accra flooding seriously cannot continue to be business as usual. And before you tell me that it floods in developed countries, tell me if it's also an annual ritual. I know it takes hurricanes and storms for that to happen. Here, all we need is just an hour of drizzle, and we are there. It is time for the script to change, and it will take your voice of anger for that to happen. I want to write and probably read a different script next year. And so, you ought to be angry. This is The Probe, and it is live on the Joy News channel. On radio, it is Joy 99.7 FM and over 30 affiliates across the 16 regions of Ghana. We are on DSTV channel 421, GoTV 144, myjoyonline.com, and all your social media platforms. And yes, we are getting interactive a lot more tonight. It is not the usual talk shop. We want to hear your voice and probably your anger as well and your experience with Accra flooding. I've seen pictures of the Daily Graphic front page as far back as 1960 and more, and it's the same story. Accra floods anytime it rains around this year. We'll start with your flooding stories before we speak to our guests for tonight. Let me take a quick break and then we get into it. I am Emefa Paul and this is The Probe. Please stay with me. You're welcome back. This is The Probe. As usual, we're live also on Joy 99.7 FM on radio, together with a dozen affiliates, over 30 of them dotted across the 16 regions of Ghana. Also on the Joy News channel, DSTV 421. Like I said, we're talking Accra flooding and how we can change the story with your story and your anger. Something definitely must change. We are hoping to rewrite the script next year by this time, and that's the Accra flooding situation will not be the same. My guests will join me shortly. Ekwejo Kilson is a drainage engineer with the GARID project. Felicity Ahafianyo is with the Ghana Meteorological Agency. And of course, we'll hear from the communications director of NADMO, George AEC. But let's start off with your comments. Accra flooding hashtag has been trending on Twitter, and we'll go through some of the comments. And whilst we do so, I'm ready to take your calls as well. What your experience is with yesterday's flooding, the recent one, or even the previous one. Hopefully, the story can change. For next year, we won't have to sit here or stand here and read the same scripts probably with just the dates changing. Let's start off from Twitter this evening. Also, we've been asking you on the Joy News channel on Facebook, and many of you have been commenting on it, telling us about your experience. What do we need to do? The ordinary Ghanaian, you need to hear your voice on this. We've been told not to be just spectators, we ought to be great citizens. So let's do that this evening. I'll start from Twitter with the hashtag Accra Floods. And Jerome Ochri, I see your message there. It says, to dominate Ghana talk shop this week, the rains are here again. Accra flooded overnight, and NADMO officials tour affected areas will be some of the news headlines. And you can bet we'll be back next year. May, June, with same stories. Nothing will change, sadly. Lydia Forson says, I don't want to hear anything other than ways we are going to fix this issue of Accra floods from politicians. Don't go and visit residents. Take pictures and give rice. Every single year this happens, and no steps have been taken to properly address it. And we have this one. Okay, Evans Nayo says, as usual, we will talk about the flooding for a while. NADMO will give them items. Media houses will report for a few days, and the president will add his support. We won't talk about how to find solutions and minimize flooding if it can't be prevented completely. And he ends with Accra Floods, hashtag. Manuel Cranton says, I remember how I almost died on the night of 26th November 2011 because flood waters trapped us at neck levels in my room. Everything was floating, fridge, pillows, clothes, etc. We stood on the study table, held onto wall nails and prayed. Accra Floods, hashtag. Ivy Prosper says, all churches should cancel service in Accra today. They should rather be serving the community, finding ways to help those displaced from the flooding, using the offering money to buy food, clothing and blankets to serve the people in need. Hashtag Accra Floods. Unfortunately, the churches are not responsible for the situation. And Stats GA says, since we are discussing hashtag Accra Floods, can the information minister tell us how much in total this government has committed to solving our drainage issues? A data on previous government to contrast will be much appreciated. And Corrosive Rule says, by now, these concert homies at the Jubilee House are preparing to come and tell us that this Accra flood was caused by Russia and Ukraine fight. Okay, Pram Fisherman says, we build on waterways, erect stretches, and hope when the rains come, all will be nice and sweet. But we forget the consequences are always dire. You have officials who also sit and look on. That's the concern. Whilst we go through the messages, you can also join us via phone. The numbers will be displayed shortly. Then you can join us via the phone as well. Then we can go on this. If you are listening on radio, the number to call is 030-221-1691 or 92. It's 030-221-1691 or 2. You can call us if you're listening on radio, also on TV. You can call us. Also go through some of your messages on social media. This one says, we used to pray for rain, but these days we got to fast for no rains cause of Accra floods. And when our leaders have to do this fasting. Okay, Na says it was horrifying seeing that car getting swept away with a driver inside. June hasn't even come, which means more floods ahead. At this point, just stay wherever you find yourself until the rain stops. That was during the rain. She sent that one. It's also on hashtag Accra Floods. And Headless YouTuber says, Accra Floods whenever it rains. Nothing has changed. Being sold since the 1960s. At this point, the best thing you can do for yourself is try to make enough money to live in areas that are less likely to get flooded. Help won't come from anywhere. Sad truth, you say. Citizen Kwesi Hornsby says the role of the police officer is to maintain public order and safety of persons and properties. This Ghana policeman deserves all the accolades. Indeed, he does. Hashtag Accra Floods. And C-Rail says Accra Floods. Since before 1960, we are not really interested in solutions. Everyone's at fault. From the corrupt official to the corrupt citizen to the average Ghanaian who waits to dump their trash in the gutters at night. This is what we create every year. And it ends with the hashtag Accra Floods. And this is the article I was referring to. And this is dated April 18, 1960. Daily Graphic, when the rains came to Accra. And that's the flooding. How can we allow our society to remain like this? Since 1960, and we're still reporting on flooding situations, the scripts must change. And it takes you and I, your effort and mine, for this situation to change. Let me go on Facebook So there are more messages on hashtag Accra Floods. The question we've been asking you on your flooding experience. This is on our Facebook page. This one says, I totally don't understand a situation like this. Today, we live in a world where people waste their time. Okay, so this some of your messages. My experience is that gods on Garland couldn't stop the nature after asking churches not to make noise. Okay, and my car was nearly washed away on the Awudome Cemetery Road to Bubuashi. What saved me was one big charcoal truck and a 4x4 pickup that were ahead of me. Even that, it wasn't easy for me. So I will advise every driver in Accra to find a safe place to park whenever it's raining in Accra. Those who are new in Accra will always be a victim. My colleague, Erasus Asaridonko, had a near-death experience also yesterday during the rain. He will also join me via Zoom much later on as well, whilst we interact on this situation. Your calls also are welcome at any point in time. We'll take them is 030-221-16912, 030-221-16912 or 2. I think I have Kwesi from Tema. Emmanuel from Kaneshi first. Let's take your call. Emmanuel, hello, welcome. Did I lose Emmanuel? Unfortunately. Kwesi from Tema. Can you hear me, Kwesi? You're welcome.
Hello?
Is the situation any different? Was it different in Tema?
Yeah, I can hear you. Good evening.
Good evening, Kwesi. Please go ahead and turn the volume.
It's not different at all.
What was the situation? Tell me about it.
Yeah, the situation here is not different.
What was the experience? Tell me about it.
Hold on, let me lower the volume.
Please, once you call, you try and lower the volume of your set. Yes, Kwesi, please go ahead.
Okay, the situation in Tema is not different at all.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a place at Committee 5, okay?
Go ahead, Kwesi.
And we thought that's the railway. That is in line with Sakumono, okay? The NADMO officials were here this evening, some few hours ago. And my problem is, until they expand the WAF at the joint or where the water passes through it to enter into the sea, until it's being expanded, that gutter over there was constructed during the late Professor Mills' time.
Mm-hmm.
And up to now, even that gutter or that drainage over the way leading into the sea is halfway choked. And up to now, as I'm talking to you now, the officials will come in and out without getting a solution to that issue there.
Okay.
So until the gutter that leads into the sea is being expanded, and the Sakumono, is choked.
Okay, Kwesi.
If it has not been drained, if they don't.
Okay, we'll try and make it very snappy so we can take as many calls as possible so I can get to my guests for some answers on this. Martin is calling from Ashie. Martin, what's your story?
Yes, I think these floodings are as a result of refuse. A lot of them are as a result of refuse. The refuges that we dump into the gutters ourselves. And looking at Accra, the areas where water comes from is mostly from the bridge side, the Adenta areas. That is where, when it rains, it floods all the way to the central point of Accra and flows down to the sea. But when you look at the population around these areas and the number of refugees that are being dumped into the gutters, it will surprise you because the place is choked.
Okay.
So for me, I will agree with the government to demarcate Accra. I mean, there are a lot of lands on the Dodowa Road, on the Afenia Road, on the Kumasi and Sangwam Road, where markets can be diverted into those places.
Okay.
So that the congestion in Accra will be reduced.
Okay. We appreciate your time. Caleb is from Nungwa. Hello, Caleb.
Yes, MFR. Good evening to you and your listeners.
Thank you.
MFR, I think that was on Saturday. I was somewhere, SCC Junction, and it was very, very bad. I couldn't go home during that time. You see, I think our leaders are being insensitive because they don't really face such issues because they are using bigger vehicles like V8 and all those stuff, so they don't really feel these problems that we feel because their houses are kind of far away from middle of town. The problem we have is the drainage systems. It's just too small. When they are doing construction, the kind of drainage systems that they build is just too small. I think it should be big and deep, if not for anything, 6 feet or 8 feet deep and wide. At least that one will accumulate enough water, pull it away from the road. When you get to SCC, that will just stretch up to Kanishi. The whole road, the gutters by the roadside are all choked up with sand. Most of them from that stretch is choked with sand. There is a way they have to do the thing so that it will brace the whole system of pushing the sand from the highlands to the gutters. So when this happens, a lot of houses get flooded, and we keep complaining, talking about every season. The moment this rainy season is over, we forget about the whole issue. The contractors who are supposed to do this work, I think they are not doing the right thing. They're not doing the work right. The contracts have been awarded to people who are not tackling the problems headway.
Okay.
So I think if government or if the institutions that are supposed to be in place are working very well, because sometimes I see this to be negligence of someone.
Okay. Caleb, we are grateful. We appreciate your time. Evans is in La Paz. Evans, what was the situation in La Paz yesterday?
Yeah, well, good evening. Good evening to your cherished viewers and listeners. Please, the flood issue, you see, when we are talking about flood, I heard someone saying we build on drainage way and all that one. Madam, let me be frank with you. When we are going for permit to build, the AMA or the whoever institution that is responsible for giving us the permit to go and build, they should follow and do a follow-up and give a demarcation. People just go there and they go and take permits anyhow. You understand? And this flood, the choking of gutters, is not about the government. It's individual. So we need to change our mindset of dumping refuse and other things into the gutters and all that. You understand? Okay. Madam, please, the flood issue is too much in Accra.
Okay.
So yesterday I was driving, my wife called me, even if you are driving this, like park somewhere, all those things.
Okay.
You understand?
All right.
Madam,
Evans, we are grateful. Yeah. Evans is calling out from La Paz. We appreciate your calls. At least you set the tone for the entire discussion. I told you Eraso Sasaridon was also near death experience yesterday during the rains. Many of you are talking about the drainage system. A number of the messages also on Twitter on the hashtag Accra Floods raises concerns about our drainage. Thankfully, Engineer Kojo Kilson is a drainage engineer with the GARID project. Is my guest in the studio today. Felicity Ahafianyo will join us via phone briefly. Is the head of Central Analysis and Forecasting at the Ghana Meteorological Agency's GMET. George Aisi is the Communications Director of NADMO, also joining me via Zoom. Today, the Minister of Works and Housing has also, as usual, been touring, and my colleague Lois was with him, and he's been interacting with some residents on the areas that they toured. We can watch it briefly, then we can get talking.
Equally important is the haphazard development of our communities. Whenever you are supposed to build, you have to go and request for a building permit from the district assembly. But most people don't do that. They just build anywhere they like. But it's the responsibility of the district assembly to make sure that they issue permits, and whenever permits are not issued, they should be decisive and pull down any structure. That is a daily graphic report in 1960. And they also experienced some sort of flooding at the time. That means that it's been with us for some time. And it means that we know the problem. We should know the problem, so we must take certain actions. The actions are at 3 levels: at the central government level, and that is why I've stated that the President Akufo-Addo, during his time, the last 5 years, has invested 450 million in the construction of drains alone from the national budget. We are about to start the construction under the project, which is an interministerial project involving Ministry of Western Housing, Ministry of Water and Sanitation, and the Ministry of Local Government. Series of interventions, measures are being implemented. I'm very confident that once that project is finished, it will solve the issue of flooding within the Odo channel. There are other drainage basins, about 30 of them in the country. That's we are working on.
But on serious. Yaya mobile one amount for the containers ha emensuo kwan so omo eden omo broken suo ko back kan kwesa connection ha payment no so ebi ma to what say na high on site omo de wall omo to wall at esi nsuo kwan nsuo no kwan nya bebi nya de emfa wo wa na containers wo na nsuo be room sika wakoji loan na wo no nyina say into your brepa or payment and so into paying for no momba modern na monka money from na mombla na momba share ade bi mo aye e wa connection kan ko start connection I say
Mrs. Akofani am 100 million so for ni nyina connection problem o mo elo kan o mo nye gota e o mo nye gota maye gota wo han so be kom but gota ni hon tin so no to me nkom nti mo nye gota no anu
every rainy season be a say na so no because so no so ebe fa no dos until level na mine wo ha no is very high nti eba nsa na your stores nyina nti dey be every year every rainy season kan kwa na ebo flooding are yan na solve your problems then who any NGO bia na say
some our interaction there with some residents during the tour of the Works and Housing Minister, Mr. Sensuwachi, with my colleague Lois there, giving us the sense of what the people are saying in the onset of the rain yesterday. And like I said, thankfully, Mr. George AEC, Communications Director for NADMO, is with us via Zoom. Felicity Ahafianyo will join us via phone. We just want to get a sense of what is to happen because we're just in April and June is, we're just in May, I should say. June is yet to come and it looks like we're expecting more rains. What exactly will be the situation? Are we going to rewrite the script? Will it still be the same? And GARID have an engineer from the Greater Accra Resilient and Integrated Development Project. They should definitely have all these answers for us. Engineer Kilson is my guest in the studio. Let's go via Zoom first and then quickly. Good evening, gentlemen. Maybe I should welcome you first. You're doing well. I hope everything is fine. Well, we need a lot of answers from you tonight. And Mr. George AEC and Erastus on Zoom, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you so much. Please indulge me and let's quickly hear from my colleague Erastus Asare Donko. So we'll let him off, then we can continue the discussion. Erastus, okay, unfortunately, Erastus has just dropped. But let me start with you, Mr. AEC. We want to get an understanding of what your assessment so far has been of the situation as we witnessed it yesterday.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening to you. What we experienced yesterday is mostly what we call flash flooding. When the rains come in that heavy and continuous, places that hitherto we know should have had smooth flowing of the flood waters get flooded, because of some of the reasons that most of your contributors said earlier. Blockades of water passageways, smallness of the drainage system, the choking or silting of the drainage system, and all that. Some of these things contribute to the flooding. And again, MFA, the built area in Accra, I'm happy we have an engineer in the studio, is also packed. Most times we begin to put pavement blocks and others in our homes when we should be having green grasses and which will absorb some of the water that will percolate. But because we have pavement blocks and others, when the rain falls on them, they drift and then they add on to the volume of flood waters that pass through our drains. And so, yes, these are some of the things. But what we experienced yesterday mostly was flash flooding.
Okay, from your assessment though, I know you've been touring as usual, checking on people, the distress calls you had and all. Which areas were really affected by it? Do we have any casualties? What exactly is the initial assessment or initial report that you're getting from yesterday?
Yes, yesterday the Kaneshi area, Mateko area, we had calls. We dispatched our search and rescue team to go there and support some of the people. With the minister's tour we went to the Greda Estate, the Sakumono area, these places too. We have Ramsey site in the Sakumono area. And you all know that some of these areas are being encroached upon and all that. So yes, these are some of the areas that we went to. And most other parts of Accra, the Shashi area, the Tesano Police Depot area, sometimes once you have an engineer, I'm bringing that up because he will have the expert advice to give, because I don't know what is happening to the road. When it rains a little, water gets collected, especially Shashi and Police Depot, and then drivers begin to have challenges. And of course, the Tetebu stretch towards the Wager toll booth area there washes sand onto the road. These are some of the challenges, but fortunately, the assemblies in those areas come to help. But sometimes they complain that it's affecting their budget. As to whether Ghana Highway or the assembly should continue to be doing this is also another matter that we need to continue to engage with.
Okay. Well, let me bring in Engineer Kielsen there. A lot of the questions, it looks like you have the answers to the situation. It looks like issues about small drains, open drainage, amongst others. But let me first find out, I'm sure you've been assessing the situation over the period. Maybe let's start from last year, this year. What exactly is the situation?
Well, I would say flooding is a multidimensional problem. And to solve this, we have to address all the aspects holistically in an integrated fashion. Usually there's a tendency to just look at the engineering aspects, and that will have short-term effects. So that's where a holistic solution to the whole problem. That's what we are missing. As somebody said, we put Band-Aid plaster on the injuries. We need a long-term plan addressing flooding in Greater Accra, and we incrementally try to minimize the damage and loss of life that occurs with each year's flood. I think that's what is missing in our system right now.
So let's get into it. We are attempting to rewrite the script such that next year, when you sit here, we will be praising the system that we didn't get floods in 2023. So what's really, let's look at the multi-dimensions that you're talking about. Let's start. Give us a breakdown of what exactly the approach should be and what the problem is.
Okay, so as I said, when I talk about the multi-dimension, first we have the issue of governance. That's the policies on flooding, then the governance structure. Which institutions are responsible for flooding? Do we need national level institutions, or we devolve power to the assemblies to resolve it? Then there's also issue of funding. That's one of the critical, for these two, the issue of funding and the governance and policy are the main issues. Then we come to the technical issues like the drainage engineering, lack of drains, poorly designed drains, then solid waste, which is very critical. In Ghana, solid waste is a problem. So solid waste also is a very major issue. So if you're able to address all this together, then we are looking at a solution. Now, we have a number of World Bank projects which have clearly defined scopes. They are beneficial, but they don't have that far-reaching effect. I mean, we have to have our own national plan, and these donor projects come to help us achieve our long-term objective. It's as if we don't look at the big picture. We have all these projects, but in the long term, we are not addressing the flooding issue. And that's one of the major issues.
Okay, so from 1960, these issues that you've mentioned, governance policy, issues about funding, drainage engineering, at least these are the three key issues that you've mentioned. What really have we done over the period on this? At least I know you can speak to the drainage engineering, where you are also. I don't know if the funding issues have been addressed and the governance structure and the policy. Do you think that it is really there? The structure for us to deal with flooding, is it really there?
I think flooding is a consequence of a natural occurrence. That's rain. We can't prevent rainfall. At best, we try and it's what we call flood risk mitigation.
But it just doesn't rain in Accra. It rains everywhere.
Yes, So it's definitely going to rain. The meteo agencies are going to predict. We, the engineers, can also predict where there will be a lot of damage. For example, in Accra, there are the usual sources: Kanishi, Roundabout, Circle. Then when you go to our western side, you have the Wager stretch. We know where the problems exist.
But it appears that yesterday there were areas that usually they don't experience flooding, but they enter the books.
Yes, that means the interventions we are putting in place are not having that long-lasting effect. So, for example, when you talk about solid waste disposal into drains, we are seeing more people selling by the roadsides. Yes, places where they were free from hawkers now have hawkers. So we are still creating the conditions that cause blockages. Because already we are challenged. We don't have a lot of funds to expand our drains. The drains we have, which have, to a large extent, outlived their purpose, are being choked. We have a lot of underground drains. It's very difficult to desilt underground drains. And usually, because they are covered, we don't know how much blockage. It's only when they are flooding that we came to realize that those drains are blocked. Yes, so that's one of the practical problems we have here, that we are encouraging, or maybe people are not obeying laws or I don't want to talk about enforcement and people not obeying. There's the enforcement bit, and for us, as citizens of Ghana, as we are citizens, we have to have appropriate waste disposal practices.
Okay.
Yes. So if you continue disposing of waste in the drains, they are covered. We will not know, but when the flood waters come, the water will flood upon the area, and we'll see the consequences of our poor solid waste practices.
Well, there are a lot of questions on this. We'll get to you. But let me just quickly wrap up with Mr. Isi on this, since he's via Zoom. Mr. Isi, so apart from the Kaneshi areas, Matai, Koshiashi, at least part of the road also flooding, we're told that there were some areas this time also that usually did not experience flooding over the period. But yesterday you had some distress calls from those areas as well. What really would you say could be the reason for this? I'm told I've just lost Mr. AEC there via Zoom. So let me come back to the studio. Once we're able to raise him, we'll get into it. So drainage issue, and we know that the Greater Accra Resilient and Integrated Development Project has been put in place. And looking at the site, I've seen that there's a portion where you ought to have a component where it's on climate resilient drainage and flood mitigation measures. A number of measures, I'm told, I've seen on your website where you even have to inform us when there's going to be flooding, amongst others. Did that happen yesterday?
Okay, so let's see. The GARID project is a World Bank funded project that has specific objectives. It's to be implemented over a 5-year period with a fixed budget.
Starting when and ending when?
2020 to 2025.
Okay.
And it's limited, the geographical extent is limited to the Odo Basin, largely the Odo Basin. And there are two approaches we are looking at. First of all, we try to divert the flood water away from the hotspots, like Kaneshi Circle. That's the first approach. Then we also have another approach, complementary approach, where we then try to move the people away from harm's way. Because Accra is heavily built up. It's not possible to expand drains everywhere. In those places where it's not possible to have engineering intervention, we now try to warn people. People evacuate early enough. So for example, look at the Kaneshi, maybe I'll look at it later. Kaneshi market stretch. Yes, we've reached a place where the engineering interventions have reached its limits.
What do you mean?
Means the place is heavily built up. There's lack of green areas that will cause water to infiltrate. We have a market, high density of people. We have a market. We have a lorry station. So if you are not prepared to decongest, to allow water to percolate to the ground, the next drastic action is to then move people, evacuate people, or stop traffic on that road when there's flood. In that we are getting people out of harm's way. That's the alternative. Okay. Because the measures, for example, when we decide to relocate the market, we'll have to compensate a lot of people. Maybe that money could have been used to expand some drains somewhere. So that's the reality we face now. The place is heavily congested, a high density of people. High density of people means a lot of waste. Covered drains, blocked. We don't know the severity of blockage. Only when the flood is occurred, we realize that these drains are blocked. So that's the reality in the Kaneshi area.
So long term, from your technical point of view, at least for us to have the reality in terms of what ought to be done, would you suggest a relocation of the Kaneshi market? Because it looks like every time it rains, once it drizzles, Kaneshi will always be choked. And you've talked about the reality on the ground, choked drains, there's no green area for the water to seep into the soil, amongst others. Should there be a relocation, a decongestion? What would you advise? Okay,
so I said that it's always good to look at a flooding issue in a multi-dimensional aspect.
Yes.
I mean, the social impact of relocating that whole market might be too much.
Okay.
So that's when we look at this option of this flood early warning. So let's make sure that this place is designated as a high-risk flood area. We have some forecasting equipment now. GMET is doing very well. The GARID project will have other systems, more advanced systems. So we can now, currently we have a situation where we inform people that there's this rainfall, they say it's coming from Togo. Yes. Then we also have NADMO. NADMO is doing pretty well. When the flood happens, they're able to get their mattresses.
But we don't want to get to that point.
Yes.
We want to take that part out
so,
where it has to happen
okay,
before
so
we get the mattresses.
it echoes a cycle. From the forecasting, that's it from the first. Then the middle one is where we then predict what impact the rainfall will have. For example, we know that when it rains in Kanishi market area, for example, from the runabout to Accra Academy, that 100-meter stretch of road, the water level will rise to maybe knee level. Then people will then advise themselves accordingly. Okay. So that's the aspect that is missing in that tractor. That we know of the weather warning, but when it rains, what is going to happen? When people know the water level will be up to my head level, I don't think you stand and wait. Okay. So that's the essence of the flood early warning system. We are forecasting the impact. We have flood risk maps. And based on these flood risk maps, people will know where to build or invest in infrastructure. Insurance rates will apply accordingly to the level of risk.
But people have businesses in this congested area, especially the Kanishi area that you talk about. What would they then have to do with this weather warning? Because once they get the warning, they can't leave with their businesses. It's already there. And there's a construction that's going on. There are no gutters, they say. The ones that you talk about that are existent are choked. Nothing can be done about it?
Okay, that's right. The engineering, as I say, we do it concurrently. We don't just implement engineering measures and allow the solid waste to continue. And there's this recent phenomenon I want to point out. We realize that our new interchanges, Ghanaians have a love for interchanges. All our interchanges seem to have flooding problems. I'll try to, if you look at Dankwa Circle, look how Dankwa Circle is. We have a lot of open drains, there's some green. We don't experience flooding at Dankwa Circle. So possibly we should go in for it, we should put emphasis on the drainage designs for our interchanges. Well, that's become a recent phenomenon. We have some drains, but because we take away a lot of the green areas, a very impervious surfaces, water and the interchanges are sort of flat. So the water ponds there, people may not necessarily die, but it disrupts traffic. So that's also from the engineering aspect, we have to fine-tune, maybe have specifications for these interchanges that are usually developed by international firms. We have a local standards such that the drainage patterns fit in the existing drainage network. You don't just come and build an interchange and the water ponds without...
Do we consult widely before these projects are undertaken? Or the international firms just come and no consultation locally, at least to know topography and everything before things happen?
Okay, this is another issue. We have meteo forecasting system, but the rain is still unpredictable.
Yes.
It's possible, for example, yesterday's rain was over about 11 hours. That's the engineer's worst nightmare. What happens when it rains, the water is supposed to move away. It rains, it just goes flat. But when it's a long time, that means water is continuously... So those events don't really happen all the time, once in a while. Yeah. So when it comes, we just hope and pray lives are not lost. So that's sometimes we say the rain is coming from Benin. We may not really know how many hours
it's going to come.
Yeah, so those dynamics are still, it's a matter of science.
We still don't have the equipment to predict that. At least we can forecast that it is coming, but we don't know the duration. We are not able to tell with our machines. Okay.
That's why it's good to have this disaster response. So in the event something happens, people are ready. And also, if you have the flood warning maps, flood risk maps, that's the middle aspect, then NADMO can concentrate its effort at specific. They don't just spread out.
Okay.
They can even be there before the calls come.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the essence of the flood early warning system. So we know the rain is coming. We have computer models to see the extent of flooding. The NADMO can then concentrate and spread out accordingly. Okay. And hopefully this should be one of the additions GARID will add.
Okay, we'll come to it on that. But I'm told Mr. Isi has joined us back via Zoom. Mr. Isi, please tell me we did not lose any lives yesterday.
As of now, the report we have, no lives been lost yet. We don't have any reports of lost lives. And I'm happy the engineer is actually touched on the technicalities. With the Hansonic down to Kaneshi area, as he said, there's an underground tunnel. Last year when we met, the district chief executive had said that a team had gone underground. In fact, sometimes we have refrigerators, fridges and coals packed underground, and so blocking the passageway of the floodwaters. And so they had to go in and then take those things out so that it will allow the free flow of water underground. The underground tunnel from Dakuma all the way through Hansonic Junction to Kaneshi, out to Toyota. These are things that I think every year the Assembly, in partnership with the Works and Housing Ministry, should be looking at. Last year it was a good move. If we continuously check on that, it will help to be able to clear the passageway for the floodwaters to go. Okay. Again, engineer said something which we have. The identified hazard maps, we have them. We have the critical areas, and sometimes we deploy our men from the search and rescue department to position themselves closer to those areas before, the rains begin. And so, yes, we have them, and then we work with those things. Now, with engineering, I agree with him. You asked whether there's consultation. Yes, there's consultation. Last year, consultants from the World Bank were at our place, and they had said that they had been to hydrological services. They are in charge of the drains directly. They came to us in relation with the GARID project, which is a technical expert in there. They came to speak to us. About 4 directors at NADMO met them, and then they asked our opinions and then what the reports say from our angle, so that they're going to factor it into their final report, which will allow World Bank to release the funding for the project to begin. And I believe he might have told you it's going to affect about 17 districts in Greater Accra. I agree with the engineer. Holistic development of the engineering and other processes of our drainage challenges in Accra is what we need to look at. And I am very positive that the GARID project is going to help us. And as I said, the commitment on the policy level, releasing of funds for the things to be done and the proper things to be done, and then the kind of drainage system that we construct. Let's look at that. I agree with him, holistic development. And NADMO, we are also playing our part on that score.
Okay. Were there any particular areas that previously NADMO did not get distress calls from that you got yesterday? Because we're told that there are certain areas that usually there were no floodings, but yesterday you got calls from these areas. Were there any particular areas of interest that we should
this year, yesterday, where we got the calls from were known places that we were expecting distress calls from. Last year or so, we had distress calls from places that hitherto we never had. Paraku Estate was a critical or typical case in point. And when we did our search, we realized somebody had built on waterway, and that started giving them problems in that particular area. So, yes, these are some of the challenges. But as of now, I've not gotten any report that yesterday we had distress calls from places that otherwise were not having challenges.
Okay, well, but so far you're saying that we have no fatalities, but casualties in terms of those who were affected by this yesterday. We know that churches were not spared. We're told about the police, barracks or the police quarters at, what do you call it, Atiko, amongst others. Yeah. It looks like they are always affected by it anytime it rains, amongst others. What sort of help have you started giving that kind of help to these people already?
Oh, immediately we do the assessment, and then based on the assessment, we'll know what kind of help. We've not started deploying any help in terms of relief. Our help will be to go there. If people are trapped, we try to rescue them to safety. Then thereafter, we do the assessment and see if they need some relief support. We'll go and then give them that. I
know your work is to provide relief and rescue, amongst others. But yes. Mr. Isi, really, are you not tired of this situation?
It's challenging, it's daunting, it is. And the relief part, we try to save lives and properties before the relief part comes in. When people are rescued and brought to safety, then you begin to look at that to see how they keep body and soul together. It is something that we've encountered many times. We would rather these things are resolved once and for all. That's why I keep saying I'm excited about the GARID project. I pray it sees the light of day so that we'll make progress on that score. Holistic re-engineering of the capital city, and then decongestion of some areas of Accra will help to make progress in these areas. Because when the place is congested, then the real solid waste, as the engineer said, begins to grow. It's more in those areas, and then the propensity for them to choke the drain.
Okay, Mr. Isi. Okay, it appears that we are losing him along the line. I'll let you go. We're grateful. That's George AEC, he's the communications director of NADMOGE there, giving us updates on the situation as we experienced yesterday. Mr. Engineer Kilsing is still with me in the studios. And I'm looking at still on the structural measures, the things that GARID is supposed to be doing. I see replacement of critical bridges that impedes the flow of water in the Odo channel. It looks like you're focusing really on the Odo, like you said earlier. You're doing a deferred and routine maintenance and dredging of the Odo channel to improve drainage and flood management. As far back as I can remember, growing up, at least entering the 40s this year, and I see that every time we hear that Odo is being dredged, we've heard all kinds of things. We've heard about the Conti project, amongst others. GARID is now in, and its main focus is the Odo. You are developing a flood retention basin, which will temporarily hold some volume of flood running into the Odo channel, rehabilitation of the Kole Lagoon interceptor weir, and then reconfiguration of Odo River outlet into the sea. First, tell me which of these critical bridges are there that's supposed to be replaced that are impeding the flow of water into the Odo channel?
Okay, let me just digress a bit.
Okay.
We are doing what we call a catchment level planning scheme. So we are looking at the entire Odo channel, which starts from the foothills of the Ebri Mountains to the sea around Kole.
Okay.
Yes. So it is when we are able to implement we have about 15 different project sites.
Okay. Is that the map on the screen?
This
is
okay, the Odo, yes,
the
this is the upper part of Odo.
Okay, so yes, I'm sure we'll give you the other maps
so
that you need on this. Okay. We'll bring you that map shortly. Yeah, we'll give you the map.
We are looking at about 15 individual projects. It's after all these projects are implemented, then the cumulative effect was what will cause a reduction in flooding. So if you are not able to finish all these 15 interventions within the project period, we would have failed in our mission. And we face challenges. For example, there's issue of encroachment on our lands. So for example, we are trying to build a detention pond. So the map we showed earlier, that's the upper part of the channel.
Okay.
So the detention pond.
Okay, which is this one?
Yes.
All the way from...
this up to around Hachu, Domi area.
Okay.
This is the upper part of the catchment.
Okay.
So the detention pond is trying to hold the water from the upper part such that it doesn't come down south to the circle to come and raise the flood level.
This is the entire map. Is that it? Okay.
No, this is the circle drain.
Okay, there's a circle drain. Okay, so you want the Odo one.
Okay, so this is
the lower section.
This is the lower section. Okay. So we want to prevent all the water from the top from coming down. The lower section is very flat. Okay. A lot of commercial activity, and where we have the highest flood damage. So we are trying to prevent.
How are you preventing it?
By having a pond.
Okay.
So the pond,
At
the water
which point?
Around GAEC, Atomic Energy Commission.
Okay.
So we stop the water and releases it after some time.
So the water coming all the way from Ebri, all the way, you are stopping it at the Ghana Atomic Energy area. Okay.
So what happens?
But where are we with that project?
Okay, so
we are 2 years into the...
Yes, that's one of our flagship projects. Yes, we're having challenges with encroachment.
Okay.
Yes, and this is a World Bank project. The World Bank has what we call safety guidelines. Typically, we just organize some bulldozers and go and break everything down. But the World Bank doesn't operate that way. Okay. You have to account for each squatter, no matter how illegal, irregular they stay, and make sure all these are compensated accordingly. Yes, that's it. So we have to make sure we get all the squatters, then have a listen. You have to replace their livelihood. Some will one will lose some sell, some plant vegetables. So in building the dam, their vegetable farms will be destroyed. Some too leave their homes. So you have to now pay compensation for each of these squatters. And we are at that stage now.
Okay.
So that has delayed. For example, these squatters, some re-emerge with time. We have what we call a cut-off date. After this cut-off date, we don't attend to any, but we are gradually at that stage. So some of the money for construction has to be diverted to pay for compensation. And our budget is fixed.
How did we wait for people to encroach?
I mean, any land that is free, that's how Accra is. Any land that is vacant space will be filled with squatters. Yeah, so that's what is delaying the detention pond. That's a very critical part. But there are also other issues. But we are now focusing on 3 priority areas. The Kanishi drain, the circle drain, and there's Achimota. There are some slabs that are broken, are now lying in the stream. So those 3 projects, we are trying to fast track them. That hopefully, we have 2 rainy seasons, the June and the September. So when this rainy season ends, we'll start construction around September. So that's the strategy now. We fast track some 3 projects. And there's also issue of having to consult stakeholders. For example, if you want to, you're talking about a bridge. If you want to work on a bridge, you have to go and see urban routes. If it's a railway bridge, Ghana Railway. So
But you haven't told me about the critical bridges.
So
have you identified some?
Okay, so let's see the map.
Okay, the full map again,
the last one.
The last one, okay.
Lower basin.
The lower basin map, yeah. Not the Kanishi drain, the lower basin one. The earlier one you just put.
Yes.
Okay, so this is it. Yes. If we can expand it a bit, and then we can see.
Zoom in.
Okay, so this is the Odo basin, the
so
lower section.
The
yeah,
blue
if you
is
can
the
zoom
lagoon.
in. Okay.
The thicker side is the lagoon.
Okay.
Okay, that's a relative flat area. So there are some 3 bridges just upstream, above the lagoon. There's one on the downstream the Graphic Road. It's the Abusukain Bridge. Okay. Then there's one, a railway bridge upstream of Graphic Road. Yes, then we go higher up. There are also some foot bridges. Yes, but they are what we call piers, what we call the legs of the bridges. When there's solid waste in the drain, these legs sort of trap the solid waste. Okay. So removing these legs will make sure that the solid waste can now move with the flow. Okay. So these are the effect. They don't necessarily stop, but they sort of allow flow to move faster. So these are not the priority measures. There are also additional measures that will help in the holistic basin-wide. Yes, but the focus is now on where we want to expand the drain. For example, Kanishi drain, Kanishi Mark, we're trying to expand the drain. At Nima, Paloma, between Paloma and Salam, they're also trying to expand the drain. So we prioritize those areas. Those have more impact than just simply removing those piers of the bridge. Okay.
Well, so these are the critical bridges that you have to do. And how about really the dredging and the maintenance of the Odo Channel to improve drainage and flood management, which is key on your agenda? Where are we with this?
So
I've been hearing about dredging.
So these days, we have drains that were constructed 1994, 1998. So those drains were designed, taking into consideration the green areas, the amount of water. Along the years, when we become more urbanized, more paved, so that means the drains have effectively outlived their usefulness. Unfortunately, it's not possible to widen because the development at the side and side. So what you can do is to divert those flows and make sure that the original designs are still performing satisfactorily, to make sure there's no deposition of silt. So this dredge is to make sure that the drains are performing optimally. Even though they've outlived, you have to make sure that they ensure smooth flow of water. So that's why dredging should be done consistently. Unfortunately, dredging is also very expensive. The money we should have used for dredging should have been used to expand the drainage network. Beyond Achimota, those drains are not lined. So all the silt comes down. So at best, you should have rather been lining those drains progressively upstream. But that's when the issue of funding comes in. Yes, and the funding is a major stumbling block. And
how come?
I mean, as a developing country, we have other competing, maybe health.
Are we not prioritizing this particular situation such that floods will become a thing of the past? You get the sense that we're actually prioritizing this?
I think we are doing something. But the financial outlays require, we are looking in excess of maybe for maybe Odo alone, possibly around $300 to $400 million.
Okay.
And Odo is just one of 10 basins. We have this Beshi basin, that's around Tishi. That's also been claiming lives.
Yes.
We don't talk of Beshi Basin projects. So all these basins are there waiting for financial injection, and we haven't done that. So it's a very big, as I say, funding is a major issue. All these donor funds are GARID. We need other GARID in other basins, but where from the money? And the government may have the intention of having those interventions, but then where do we get the money from? Is it from e-levy? Is it from this?
At least e-levy is in. Maybe we can get a bit from there.
So that's the reality. Yes, the problem is there. It's big. We are trying to solve it. But sometimes, by virtue of being a developing country, our own peculiar way of life, how we dispose of it, we compound a problem that could have been addressed with long-term planning.
Well, so apart from the funding, the governance structure, the drainage engineering that we've been trying to delve into, looking at, I'm sure that whilst you're doing this project, you have actually taken a look at Accra holistically, at least the plan that we have in terms of how it ought to be. Do you think that we've stuck to the plan? Is Accra really planned
I think
properly?
Accra has been lax in its planning. Yes, we have a lot of studies. For example, we did a master plan, I think 2020, a long-term master plan. It's been lying on the shelf maybe just a year. We do a lot of studies, but the follow-up is usually not very good.
Why?
I don't know. That's one. That's what the engineer.
So we just plan?
Yeah, we plan, we do the documents, we do a project. They should follow up. For example, after GARID, what's the plan after GARID? Before GARID, there were other projects. Did we build on them? We should take the initiative and let...
And GARID is ending in 2025, and we don't know what is happening after GARID.
Planning beyond. That's what we've not done over the years.
Interesting. That we plan, but it appears that nothing happens to it. Well, interesting times that we're in. And we've been talking to Engineer Kilson there. He's with the Ghana Accra, Greater Accra Resilient and Integrated Development Projects and Drainage Department. Also there earlier, you heard from the Communications Director for NADMO, and then also your calls and your concerns. Hopefully, the script will be different next year. And it's been the probe. Many thanks for your company. And we'll be checking on GARID a lot. Hopefully, we'll see whether something would change, and we'll be able to get some different story next year, because people are not happy about the situation. And that's it for our show for tonight. Definitely, this whole week, we'll definitely be talking more about Accra flooding. I'm told it rained in Western region for hours as well, but no flooding there. Good for you. The situation is different in Accra. Up next for our radio audience is a Walk with Jesus, and kindly join Pastor Atuakwa and his guest, Ariel, wellness coach, for discussion on understanding the biblical perspective of wellness. I am MF Apau. There's more news when you log on to myjournalline.com. Many thanks to my production team for the show. Another edition comes your way same time. Have a good evening.